Welcome to KIR Review. I made sure this gets out before Ultraman Decker starts airing. Time to review 2021's Ultraman Trigger. I'll start off spoiler-free and give my too long didn't watch review. Ultraman Trigger is the new generation version of Ultraman Tiga. As someone who's still never watched Ultraman Tiga in full, I wasn't grabbed nearly as much by the nostalgia elements. The show felt like it was trying too hard to bring back the good old days, and never really developed an identity of its own. It didn't help that I really can't stand the main character. I was ready to punch something by the 10th smile. The other characters range from decent to great, so that's something. The visual effects are gorgeous and all the suits are well designed. Soundtrack is pretty good too. Overall, it's not my favorite New Generation series. It's down there with Rube and Jeed for me in terms of memorability. To each their own though, I won't stop you from checking it out. Alright, now get. We're going into spoiler territory. To sum up the plot as succinctly as I can, Trigger awakens on Mars and comes to Earth via his host Kengo. But so do the three Dark Giants, Chimera, Hudram, and Dargon. Their goal is to access the Eternity Core sealed away on Earth and effectively drown the entire universe in darkness. Trigger gets power-ups in the form of hyper keys in order to defeat the monsters the Dark Giants summon and fight the Dark Giants themselves. Along the way, the protagonists have multiple run-ins with alien treasure hunter Ignis. Ignis eventually gets the ability to transform into Trigger Dark. Kengo has an existential crisis, Yuna has an existential crisis, Ultraman Reboot appears and helps them both through it, and they're cured. Eventually Chimera kills the crap out of Dargon and Hudram, absorbs their dark energies, and then gets access to the Eternity Core, where she proceeds to transform into the grotesque monster Megalathor. She's able to overwhelm the combined might of Trigger Dark and Glitter Trigger Eternity and transform into a more grotesque and more powerful form after absorbing their essences. But this is Ultraman and the heroes always prevail. Ignis gives the Trigger Dark key to Kengo and it reacts with the Trigger Multitype key to become the Trigger Truth key. This is the form Kengo uses to ultimately defeat Megalathor and help Chimera, I guess, get redeemed and pass on. Oh yeah, there's a point where Tiga shows up too. Zat also makes an appearance. At face value, it's a good story, but they had to ham on a bunch of Tiga nostalgia to the point where, as I said in the quick review, Trigger has no real identity of its own. Aside from Trigger Truth being the real final form as opposed to Glitter Tiga, it's basically a point-for-point remake. Add to that the majority of characters are overall misses. Speaking of characters, let's do that. Let's talk about Kengo! I do not like Kengo Monica. I dare say I like him even less than Chimera did, and she loathed him. He has the dumbest catchphrase of all time, and he doesn't stop saying it. To the point where in the final episode he's got the whole crew saying it. Stop! Can you just take one moment, Kengo, to stop being annoying or cringe, but usually both? Not a good look for a main character. Fortunately, I don't have the same level of disdain for the other characters. Mitsukuni Shizuma is one of the founders of TPU and helped establish Gut Select, the series' kaiju fighting team. Shizuma is also originally from Tiga's universe who was brought to Trigger's universe in a Freak Warp event. He's not a main character, but he brings a level-headed presence to the cast. Reina Monica is Kengo's adoptive mother, considering he's later revealed to be an incarnation of light and was just chilling in a cave on Mars as a baby where Reina found him. She is responsible for Kengo's vomit-inducing catchphrase of smile smile, but she's not nearly as obnoxious with it. Seiya Tatsumi is the captain of Gut Select. Most of the time he's a level-headed serious guy, but he has his moments of emotion. He's a well-rounded character. Yuna Shizuma is both Mitsukuni's daughter and a descendant of the priestess Yuzare from the ultra-ancient civilization. She's got a good character arc, arguably more fleshed out than Kengo, and comes to terms with her identity and purpose pretty well considering it was hidden from her for 18 years. Akito Hijiri is the brains of Gut Select and my second favorite character in the show. I jive with his personality and pity him whenever Kengo's being a complete goofball. He's jealous of and angry with Kengo for most of the series since he thinks he's the rightful host of Trigger and Kengo took that away from him. For a time I thought Akito would be the one who would become Trigger Dark, but in context of the whole show it wouldn't have made much sense. Tenshin Sakuma is the pilot of Nurse Dese, Gut Select's battleship. He's more obnoxious than Kengo, but in a better way, if that makes sense. He's a total gym freak, but also motivates the rest of the team on multiple occasions. Himari Nanase is the character I don't understand. She's calm, cool, collected, no nonsense. But get her in the Guts Falcon control chair and her personality completely flips. I guess that can and does happen with certain people, but it's just bizarre to see. Last up for Guts Select is Marlulu. He's a kid alien Metron and, he's okay. I was hoping to like him a lot when we still just had the trailers since Alien Metron is a favorite, but nah, he's just okay and that's all there is. On to Ignis. I am not hiding the fact that Ignis is my favorite character in Ultraman Trigger and in my opinion is the best character in the show. He's a treasure hunter and the last survivor from the planet Lashuria, whose civilization was wiped out by Hudron. He's got a great character arc and is very well written. Ignis gained the power of Trigger Dark via the prototype Spark Lens. It was an unstable transformation at first, but Akito eventually repaired it and Ignis became more of an ally to Gut Select. The last character I'll discuss is Yuzure. She's essentially Yuna, but much more stoic. Also dead. She most often spoke to Kengo through dreams or visions. Eventually, Yuna was able to call on Yuzure's spirit in order to use her powers. The designs and suit quality in Ultraman Trigger are pretty good. Multi-type and Sky-type are probably my favorite. Power-type is decent. Glitter Trigger Eternity doesn't really do it for me. It feels like a reject Mobius Brave in a way. Not a fan of the weapon either. I do like Trigger Dark's design. Trigger Truth looks decent as well. As for the Dark Giants, they're pretty great updates on the original designs from 1996. In the same vein, Absolute Diavolo debuted in this series and he looks pretty swole too. On to Kaiju Designs, and it's the same premise as the Ultraman Z review, only looking at Kaiju debuting in Ultraman Trigger. We'll start with Golba. He's exactly what you expect, a fusion between Golza and Melba. I suppose he looks good enough. Nurse Dese's battle mode is a very nice update to the Nurse Dragon. Guts Falcon is a neat robot. It's got a flight mode and a hyper mode it can transform into. Death Drago is just weird. Metsu Orga and Metsu Orochi are just recolors of Woola from Ultraman Taiga and Maga Orochi from Ultraman Orb, but I still love them. Mecha Musashin is pretty neat. Not much more to say there. Barry Geiler is a repaint of Goro Thunder from Ultraman Taiga. He looks ridiculous, but that's probably the point. Megalathor is Chimera's monstrous transformation after she was able to access the Eternity Core. The first form isn't that horrifying, but the second form is a little more Lovecraftian. Moving along to music and special effects. Visually, Ultraman Trigger is a very nice show to watch. The practical and special effects are on point. I think that's the strongest thing it has going for it. As for the soundtrack, it's decent. There's some good themes, but overall the music is really hitting the Tiga nostalgia notes. The opening theme, Trigger, is pretty catchy, but I did find myself skipping it while watching the later episodes since it cuts to commercial right afterward anyway. I personally barely paid attention to the ending themes. They're okay, but really down-tempo and mellow. Ultra Boot Camp, just no. I can't stand that song. It's way too... I'm almost scripting swear words. It's way too campy. There's a bunch of character-specific songs. Dear Smile is Kengo's, and it's just as cheesy as he is as a character. Step Up Tomorrow is Yuna's, it's tolerable. Akito's is Realize, it's also tolerable. Hunt in the Dark is Ignis' song, and it's much more my speed. Not surprising, as he's arguably the best character in this show. Marlulu's got Metron Sunset. It's campy, but a little charming at the same time. And then there's the End of Light for the Dark Giants. It's weirdly upbeat, but I suppose from their perspective, they're the good guys. Thanks, I hate it. That's not to say the music is bad, it's just not music I would actively seek out. It's no secret after this review that Ultraman Trigger is not my favorite entry. Maybe things might have been different if I had watched Tiga as a kid, but the fact is I didn't. And even so, certain Tiga fans are disappointed. It's not necessarily a bad show, but as I've said, its main problem is that it's chasing Tiga. If Tsuburaya really wanted to bring back the spirit of Tiga, a better option would have been to just remake Tiga frame for frame with better technology and effects. We'll see if this flaw is rectified by Ultraman Decker.